An economic assessment is never complete if you don't take the time to look at the economic consideration for the other party. In the previous episode, I discussed the economic impact of the decision from Sahelian countries to actually withdraw from the ECOWAS. I looked at what such a decision might actually mean for economic growth and development agenda on Sahelian countries. But now I'm going to also do the same exercise for the ECOWAS, i.e. coastal countries. What might happen should Sahelian countries do actually leave the West African, economic organization and actually reduce the number of ECOWAS members from 15 to 12. What economic impact will such a departure will bear on the ECOWAS itself? This is my last analysis, which is also going to bear my concluding remarks on such a shocking news but yet interesting subject to discuss among ourselves. Welcome to your favorite podcast, Smart, Intellectual, Knowledgeable African. I'm Philippe S.I.K.A. And as always, it's a pleasure to be with you. If you're not yet a member of our amazing community of young intellectuals, I invite you to click on the subscribe button and to also activate the ring bell so that you don't miss out on the very interesting upcoming episode. I also want to take the time to share an amazing news with all of you and let you know that from the 1st of August 2024, S.I.K.A Talks will now have guest speakers. The podcast is now open and available to all of you. Should you want to actually discuss any topic so long as they relate to development, politics, and social life of the African continent, you can reach out to me on the email address that I will actually put in the description bar below. And it's pod.sikatalks.gmail.com. Oh, sorry. Let me repeat. It's pod.sikatalks. No, pod.sikatalks@gmail.com. Yeah, that's a correct one. But anyway, never mind. You should just refer to the address that I will actually put below. So if you want to discuss any interesting topic, it doesn't have to be a current topic. It doesn't have to be, we can even discuss old topic so long as they relate to development, to politics, and to social life of the African continent. You can pick any countries and reach out to me, and I will happily, host you, and we can actually discuss your powerful perspectives and share them out with our community and spread the good word. Thank you for your time. Now I'm going to start with this last episode discussing and also assessing the true meaning of the decision from Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to withdraw from the ECOWAS after almost 50 years of membership. Like I said in the introduction, it is impossible to actually do an economic assessment without looking at the impact on both sides. And on the ECOWAS side, they will surely have economic consequences should Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso do decide to leave on January 2025. And in the list of several economic impact I can think of, I decided to highlight some of the most important, some of the pressing ones. And the top consequences I can think of is the reduction in terms of market size. Right now, when taking the ECOWAS market, it is made of 15 countries. And all 15 countries are actually made of a total population of roughly 400 to 500 million people. And those people represent a very important consumer market because they do spend a lot of money on housing. They do spend a lot of money on food. They do spend a lot of money on transport. They do spend a lot of money on, day-to-day expenses. So in the event where the economic bloc will actually lose 3 members, we are now looking at a market reduction in terms of total consumers in the West African bloc of 15 to 20%, which means we may actually go from roughly 500 million people to 400 million people, which actually will represent a loss of almost 100 million of consumers, and in turn will strongly and highly impact, the market production, but also consumption of goods, within the ECOWAS bloc. And to give you a bit of context, you should understand something. The reason why China is one of the most thriving markets in the world is not just because of productivity, but it is also because of consumption. And the reason why the Chinese market is one of the most thriving market in the world is because of its market size. It is a market of over 2 billion people, which means that as a business, as a company, whatever product you are actually putting out there, so long as you can guarantee a minimum quality and you can also guarantee a minimum quantity, you will have for sure, a market share, available for you to make some profit. Meaning that it is almost impossible for you in a market of 2 billion people, if you're doing your activities right, not to have any consumer, not to have any customer. So the more people there is in the market, the more likely you are as an entrepreneur or as a company to actually have a market target and also have a market share. Now, the question of profitability depends on the quality of the product, depends on your marketing strategy, depends on your market target, and etc. But in a nutshell, the more people you have in the market, the higher you are actually to make some sale and also make some profit. Now, in the West African context, like I was saying, we might actually be in a scenario where the market in terms of total population was sizable, but now with the future departure, of 3 countries, we might actually move from a sizable market to a minimum market, which means companies are now going to have to fight more and tougher to actually remain their top position, but to also make sure that they are not losing their existing customers. So this is going to be a very critical situation and a very critical scenario for companies that are going to remain and to be making business within the ECOWAS bloc. Unfortunately, the bloc is going to reduce considerably, but they won't have the opportunity to compete, on par with their counterpart in Sahelian bloc. So this is a very interesting and this is a very important aspect that ECOWAS leaders should also consider when looking at the potential impact of Sahelian countries withdrawing from the ECOWAS on January 2025. Another very important aspect, the second important aspect to also consider and to also look at when assessing the impact, on ECOWAS itself is in terms of supply of goods, supply of product within ECOWAS market. Some products, might actually become very difficult to find. And the reason is pretty simple. When you take, for instance, some vegetables like onion and tomatoes, the largest producers and the largest exporters in West Africa are Niger, and Burkina Faso. Now that they might actually leave the ECOWAS bloc, it will definitely going to be very difficult for ECOWAS market, especially coastal markets, to have an optimal level of supply of those products. Another aspect to also consider is the livestock market. When you take the market in Abidjan, when you take the market in Dakar, when you take the market in Lomé, most of those markets are getting their product from Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. Those Sahelian countries are the largest producers and exporters of livestock within the West African bloc. And we all know the importance of meat in the daily consumption of people and how price affordability is a very important, indicators for households, survival, especially in this current, difficult economic times since the beginning of the pandemic and also the beginning of the crisis in Ukraine and also the crisis in Israel. Like, we are living currently in a highly inflationary environment. So price affordability is very important. But now in the circumstances or in the event where the three nations might actually withdraw from ECOWAS, this might actually result in a low supply, in terms of lack of livestock, in coastal market, which in turn will also put a strain, on household, purchasing power. For instance, the average, price of 1 kg of beef might actually go from 1 to twice the price, starting from next year. And like I said, meat is very important, in people daily consumption. Therefore, that kind of scenario will definitely have a huge impact, on household, within the ECOWAS bloc, but probably also an household within the Sahelian bloc. But I will not actually develop that aspect because I've already, dedicated a full episode looking at the impact on Sahelian countries. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, I strongly recommend that you start with this episode first and then you conclude with this current one that I'm making. The third economic impact also for ECOWAS to consider is in terms of loss of revenue. Well, the revenue factor is not just being challenging on Sahelian countries, but it's also very challenging on ECOWAS for the mere reason that Sahelian countries, all of them do not have port. Whenever they want to export the product, outside the West African region, they actually use coastal countries' port. They use the port of Abidjan, they use the port of Lomé, they use the port of Dakar, for instance. But now we should also remember that that kind of service is never free of charge. They have to pay a certain amount, even though it's at a discounted price because of their membership, their ECOWAS membership, but still it represents, a subsequent source of revenue for coastal countries. Now, in the scenario where the three Sahelian nations might actually leave the ECOWAS, this might actually lead to a loss of revenue for coastal countries, which might no longer be able to enjoy, the benefit of shipping, product on behalf or for Sahelian countries. Of course, Sahelian countries can actually use the port in Guinea, Conakry, as an alternative solution, or maybe continue using the port of ECOWAS country members, but that will depend on the kind of agreement, bilateral agreement between a specific silent countries with a specific coastal country. Let's say, for instance, it might actually depend on the bilateral agreement between Niger and Cote d'Ivoire to continue using the port of Abidjan, save that they will obviously pay a higher amount in terms of fees and in terms of customs and etc. But overall, if the decision becomes effective on January 2025, another consequence to also consider on ECOWAS itself might be the loss of revenue. The fourth consequence to also look at is the same as the one I mentioned in my previous episode. It's the flux of people. It's very difficult to have thriving economies. It's very difficult to promote development agenda if you are no longer able to guarantee freedom of movement. And the reason is pretty simple. Like I said in the previous episode, economies are created for people. Without people, there can no longer be economy. So if you are going to create an environment where you are going to restrict people's movement, it is going to be very difficult for people to move from place to place. It's going to be very difficult for companies to actually partner with other companies so that they can improve their competitiveness, so that they can improve the quality of the product, so that they can improve their access to raw material and human capital and skilled labor, etc. So also in the event where ECOWAS might actually lose countries like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, the consequences are also going to be detrimental on ECOWAS side, because many people living in ECOWAS coastal countries are actually partnering with other people living in silent countries. There are businesses that have ongoing, business relationship and business agreement with a counterpart in Sahelian nations. So this aspect, again, is also going to be one of the key strengths that we might actually see on the side of ECOWAS. Now, as my concluding remarks, I would like to say that I personally do not think that this kind of solution might be the best. Well, I believe that we should be able to actually make a difference between our political disagreement versus our economic disagreement or our economic objective. The African continent, as it stands right now, has the lowest level of intra-trade in the world, which means that African nations do not trade enough with one another. And it is very difficult to actually reach the level of economic development that we would like to actually reach without being able to create and to boost our local economies and to also boost our intra-trade level. So if we are not moving into, a landscape that is going to favor more collaboration, that is going to favor more teamwork from countries to countries, it's going to be very difficult to actually be able to create an environment of prosperity for every individual on the continent. So in my opinion, this decision to withdraw from the ECOWAS should not become effective. This decision should actually, highlight only the limit of ECOWAS as an organization. And should Sahelian countries continue disagreeing with the current state of affairs, at the regional level, In my opinion, the solution should not be to withdraw or to leave, but the solution should be to come up with a clear plan and clear proposal. If you disagree with something, you should be able to offer a solution. And the first cause of solution should not be withdrawal, but the first cause of solution should be to actually present a clear agenda, highlighting and suggesting and offering some mechanisms in order for the West African bloc to remain united and to remain prosperous and to continue improve and increase, the rate and the level of intertrade. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I also hope that you've enjoyed this series of episodes meant to offer you powerful perspectives, but not to tell you what to think of, how to think of the situation. Thank you for taking the time to listen to your favorite podcast, Smart, Intellectual, Knowledgeable African, the podcast where strong realities meet powerful perspectives. À bientôt.